Hey everybody, what's going on? It's James here with LearnToCode.cc. And in this video, we're going to build an application from the ground up. We're going to make it a simple slots application. So a small little game that people can play inside of the console window. And I'm going to walk through building it from scratch. So I have a VS Code open and I've got a main.py file with a couple of comments at the top. It just says we're going to build a slots game using Python that generates 3 random numbers. If the numbers match, players will win tokens. If the numbers don't match, players will lose tokens. And I decided what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to build this app without any functions or without any kind of, advanced topics inside of Python. We're going to do this with basic stuff that you probably already know if you've watched my other videos, concepts like variables and loops, conditional statements. All those sorts of things are what we're going to use to build this application. So the first thing that we need to do is think about all the pieces that we're going to need. Obviously, we're going to need some variables. We're going to have to store things like the number of tokens a player has. We're going to have to store things like how much it costs each time they spin or each time they pull the metaphorical lever. We're going to have to account for things like checking whether the three random numbers match. We're going to have to look at things like what happens if they win, what happens if they don't win, so on and so forth. So the first thing we'll do is I'm going to start with some of the easier stuff. I need some variables. So I'm going to go ahead and set a variable. So we'll say that tokens equals 100. So a player starts with 100 tokens. I'm going to set the spin cost. So set spin cost. So spin cost equals, we'll say it costs 10 tokens every time they want to spin. Now, if they win, let's set the win amount. So win amount equals, we'll say they win 100 tokens when they win. Okay, so we'll get rid of that space there and we'll just go ahead and comment. All right, so I've got some basic variables there, and that's pretty much the only variables I'm going to need to get started here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how this game is going to work. Again, what I'm thinking in my mind is I'm thinking of a slots game, and slots typically, I've never played slots in real life, but typically in the slots that I've seen, it's there's 3 columns and you're trying to match those 3 columns. A lot of times there's pictures that you're trying to match, but in our game we're going to try to match numbers, and so we'll use 0 through 9 as our options. And so what I want to do is I want to generate a random number between 0 and 9 for each of those columns. Now there's actually a module in Python or a library that we can import called random. And that will give us access to some methods that we can use to generate random numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and write that code right now. We'll say random numbers equals, we'll make it an empty list at first, right? Because we're going to store 3 numbers inside of that list. And then we'll say for I in range 3, which will make this loop run 3 times, random numbers dot append, random integer between 1 and 2. No, we want between 0 and 9. Okay, and just so that you can see how that works, I'm going to go ahead and just print it out real fast to our console. So I'll save this. When I print random numbers, which is this variable here, let's do this. Let's put a print statement here so you can see what it looks like. So I'll comment that out. And in order to run this, I'll open up a terminal window. So I'll hold Control and press back tick on the, I'm on a Windows machine right now. And I'll just type Python space main.py, which is the name of my file here, and press enter. And we can see that when it prints random numbers, it's printing the variable, which at this point in time is an empty list. Okay. So if I uncomment this down here and I save it and run it again, I can see now my list is 3 variables. It's actually, it's 3 integers. And this happens to be a jackpot. All 3 matched 0, 0, 0. If I run it again, I can see that it's still 0, 0, 0. Now, that's a little odd. Why is it 0, 0, 0? I just noticed a bug in my code. I put 0, 0, and I should have been putting 0, 9. So let's run it again. And there we have it. We have 1, 1, 0. If I run it again, I get 1, 5, 4. If I run it again, I get 7, 3, 6, and so on and so forth. So now I have the actual code that's generating my random 3 numbers. That's essentially, what shows up when somebody spins the slot machine. So go ahead and take this print statement out because we don't need it yet. And so far, so good. So what's the next step? Well, let's think about this logically. We can generate numbers. We have token variable. We have a spin cost variable. We know how much a player wins if they're right. But right now, the player is not actually playing. So how do we make that player play? Well, we could use an if statement to start with. So let's say if tokens is greater than cost to play, so spin cost. So now if the tokens is greater than spin cost, what happens? We generate these 3 random numbers. So I'm going to move that inside of there, get rid of it up here. Okay, so we'll get rid of this print. We don't need it anymore. So for I in range 3, we're going to generate 3 numbers. Cool. Now we need to check if all numbers are the same. If the first number, which would be random underscore numbers 0, index 0, equals random underscore numbers index 1, equals random numbers in index 2. So I'll go ahead and tab over. That tokens plus equals win amount. Okay, so in other words, if all those numbers match, we're going to add 100 tokens, because that's our win amount, to the current tokens. And you're probably already familiar with this, but if you're not used to this, tokens plus equals win amount would be the same as me writing out tokens equals tokens plus win amount. This is just a shorthand way of writing that. Okay, so we'll leave that out. And it's also going to print you won blank tokens. It's going to go ahead and enter the win amount, whatever they won in there. All right, else their token count is going to go down by the spin cost, and they're going to get a message that says they lost. So let's save this, and let's run this program real quick. So it says Python main.py, you lost 10 tokens. Well, that's not all that great because we don't know what the numbers were. Sure, we know we lost, but I kind of like to know what the numbers were, wouldn't you? So let's add a statement in here. It says print random numbers, so we can at least see what the numbers were. And let's try it again. We'll run that, and we get 241, you lost 10 tokens. Okay, so now we know what the 3 numbers were. We know we didn't match, and so we know we lost 10 tokens. But there's a few problems here. First problem, obviously, is the game exits after 1 spin. And if I start the game again, I'm always going to start with 100 tokens. And so we don't want to exit after every spin. We only want to exit when the player decides to quit or when the player runs out of tokens. So how do we handle that case? What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a while loop. I'm going to say while true, do something. Okay, so in this case, while true, I'm going to move all this over so it's inside the while loop. While true, if tokens is greater than spin cost, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. So we'll run it, Python main.py. And if you look, what's happened is it's just ran over and over and over again. And it's done some really weird stuff here because the first time it ran, it looks like it, well, let's make this a little bigger. It did a list of 3, lost 10 tokens. Next time it was a list of 6, lost 10 tokens. Next time a list of 9, lost 10 tokens. And it just kept going and adding more and more and more to the list. But that's not really what we want to do. We don't want to just keep adding to the list. We want to create a new list every time we run our program, or at least 3 new numbers inside of our list. So let's go ahead and see if we can't fix that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move random numbers from outside of my loop to inside of my loop. So let's first try it up here at the top. Let's see what happens. So while true, random numbers, yada, yada, yada. Let's run the program. Python main.py, run. And this time I am getting a new list each time. You can see that the first time it ran, it was 043, then 379, so on and so forth. All right, but it doesn't look like anything's happening. It doesn't look like the program's actually exiting. And the reason is simple, is because even though I may run out of tokens, which stops this if statement from executing, I'm forever inside of this loop because it's always true. It never breaks out of that loop. So in fact, right now, this program is still running. It's stuck in an infinite loop. So I'm going to hold Control and press C to kill the program. So I need to fix my infinite loop. I need to make sure that when I run out of tokens, I exit this while statement. So how can I do that? So if I look here, this else is actually tied to this if. This is an if-else statement here. It is not tied to this up here. So what I want to do is I want to come down here and add an else to this if statement. So right down here, I'll type else, and I'm going to type print, you don't have enough tokens to play, and then I'm going to type break, which breaks it out of that while loop. So now I'm going to save this, I'm going to run it, and we can see that after running several times, the player ran out of tokens, and it says you don't have enough tokens to play, and the program exited. So that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and add some more print statements, make it a little bit more descriptive. So after each time they spin, we'll say you lost X tokens, and then we'll go ahead and print out you have blank number of tokens left. All right, so that way we can kind of keep up with what's going on here. So let's run it again, and we can see now it prints out, the result of the list. It tells us, hey, you lost 10 tokens, you've only got 20 left, and then eventually it runs out of tokens. So now we have a basic loop for our game. But think about this. If you were going to play slots at a casino, you wouldn't want to put your money in once, pull the lever, and then just watch it spin and spin and spin until you eventually ran out of tokens, because that's the only way this ever ends. Even if there's jackpots along the way, it will keep playing until it goes broke. So what we really want to do is we want to ask the user, do you want to play again? So let's go ahead and add some logic to do that. So I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to make this variable true by default. Okay, and then in here, if tokens is greater than spin cost, I'm going to ask the player, I'm going to say play again equals input. Would you like to play again? Yes or no? And in fact, I'm going to change this from true. I'm going to change this to a string value of y. Okay. So if tokens is greater than spin cost, play again equals input. Would you like to play again? Yes or no? And then I'm going to move all of this code over again. So we'll move this. This code is only going to execute if play again equals yes. So we need to add an if statement up above it. So if play again equals yes, we're going to do all of this. Else, if play again equals no, we're going to say print, you have tokens left, and we're going to break out. In fact, I'm going to change this print statement. I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to say print, thanks for playing. Okay, and then I'm going to break out of that loop if it's no. And if they don't say yes and they don't say no, then I'm going to say, you've put in some invalid input, please try again. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add that. Now I've got some errors, so let me go through here and find out what my errors are. Syntax error, it's elif for elif and Python, not elsif. So I fixed that. Let's go ahead and run it and see if it works as we expect. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go down and run it. Says, would you like to play again? Well, we haven't played it all yet, so we already have a problem there. We'll fix that in just a second. I'm going to say B, and it says invalid input, please try again. I'll say A, no, try again. 4, no. So it looks like, that part is working. If we don't put in yes or no, it's going to ask us to do it again. So I'm going to say capital Y. Oh, invalid input. Well, I said Y, it's expecting a lowercase y. So we're going to have to fix that in a second as well. So let me go ahead and hit lowercase y. Now it works. It spins. It gives me 329. It says I lost 10 tokens. I've got 90 left. Do I want to play again? I'll hit yes. I've got 80 left. I'll hit yes, yes, yes. So that's working. Let me hit no. It says you have 50 tokens left. Thanks for playing. So overall, it's looking pretty good. Let's fix a few of those small issues. So first things first, let's go ahead and add a dot lower method on the end of our play again variable. And the reason we're going to do that is because now if I enter a capital letter, this is automatically going to change that to a lowercase. If I hit capital Y, it'll make it a lowercase y. Let's go ahead and test that real fast. So I'm going to hit a capital Y, and what happens? It works. Hit a capital N, what happens? It works. Okay? So we fixed that. The other thing that we need to fix, though, is it's asking us if we're going to play again before we've ever played at all. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to fix that by going up above my while loop, and I'm going to add another variable, and I'm just going to call this, we'll call it new game. And I will say true. So I'm going to go down inside of my while loop, and I'm going to say if tokens is greater than spend cost, and where it says play again, and it's asking for that input, I'm actually going to add an if statement above that. So I'm going to say if new game equals false, do this. Otherwise, it's not going to do that at all. So by default, my new game is going to be true. So let's run this and see what happens. So I'm going to run it, and we've got problems. It just ran and ran and ran until it ran out of tokens, which was a bug that we had already fixed, and now we've reintroduced it into our code. So how do we fix that? Well, what we need to do right now, the new game variable is set to true, and it never changes. It stays true. We need to change that to false after that first spin. So what we'll do is if play again equals yes, we'll add new game equals false. And now I'm going to run it again. It runs once. I lost, so it says I lost 10 tokens. You have 90 tokens left. Would you like to play again? I'm going to say no. It tells me I have 90 tokens left. Thanks for playing, and exit the game. Let's run it again and see what happens if I hit yes. Yes, I want to play again. Great. You lost. 80 tokens left. You want to play again? Yes. 70 tokens left. You want to play again? Yes. 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 Down to 10 tokens, and I've ran out of tokens. Now, I just noticed another bug, though. It says I have 10 tokens left. It then says you don't have enough tokens to play, but it only costs 10. That's because right here it says if tokens is greater than spend cost. We should change that. I need to change that to greater than or equal to. All right? So at this point, we essentially have a fully functioning game that we can run inside of our console, and we can tweak the variables as we see fit. So for example, maybe we want our spend cost to only be 5 tokens. And maybe when they win a jackpot, they should win 500 tokens. And maybe they start with 50 tokens instead of 100. We'll save that. And now if I run it, we can see that you have lost 5 tokens. You have 45 tokens left. Would you like to play again? Yes. 40 tokens left, 35, 30, 25, 20, so on and so forth until I'm out of tokens. Now, probability-wise, when you're trying to match 3 numbers like this, there's only about a 1% chance of matching all 3 numbers. And so we can make this game more interesting by adding other win conditions. So for example, if they match 2 out of 3, maybe they win, 5 tokens back or 10 tokens back, etc. But essentially, we have a fully functioning console game. And you can see that this is not complicated to build. These are all pretty basic concepts. We used an import statement so we could access that random module. We used some basic variables like tokens and spend costs. We set those up with integers. Nothing fancy there. We used a play again variable, which we set to a string value of y. We used a new game variable, which we set to a Boolean value of true. And then we used some conditional flows. So for example, we had a while loop, and we had some if statements. Okay, we also had a for loop. For I in range of 3, we did something. And we used a simple list here, random numbers. and then we appended some values to that list. So we've got some input, used a couple of built-in methods, and used some string interpolation. Overall, it's a really straightforward program that does exactly what we need to do, and it's using all the basic concepts that you've already learned throughout the other videos in this channel. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll talk about taking the same code, and we're actually going to break it down, make it a little bit more modular, and we're going to start putting it into some functions that makes it just a little bit cleaner code. If you enjoyed this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and do me a favor, leave me a comment. Let me know where you're at on your coding journey. Let me know how long you've been at it, and maybe let me know what your goal is. Are you trying to become a web developer? Are you trying to become build desktop applications, mobile games, mobile apps? What is it you're trying to do? Do you want to find a job in this field? Do you want to maybe start your own company, start your own business in this field? I'd love to see where people are at. Maybe that would help me to kind of structure the content going forward. As always, thanks for watching. This is James with learntocode.cc. I'll see you in the next video.